Do you want to know what the biggest pain in business is? I'll give you a hint. It's way, way, way worse than when this guy used to get stung by wasps. Coyote Peterson, that OG guy from YouTube, who used to blow up getting stung by this stuff. It's actually having zero clarity on what to do and how to execute to get to the next level. And then switching between meaningless tasks, going through Slack, talking to clients, checking your email, and doing all that BS all day and never getting any work done. And then feeling like your brain has spent a few hours in a NutriBullet as a result. You work. It's not as if you're not trying, you're not working hard. You want to focus on the highest leverage stuff. You want to scale as fast as you possibly can. But you look back on what you've achieved every couple of weeks or so, and you kind of wonder where all the time went. It's like time's just like slipping you by, and you can feel that you're not focusing on the highest leverage tasks. And the worst part about that is you don't know how to fix it. However, in this presentation, I am going to fix this problem for good so you can work the same amount but get 10 times more output, take leaps and bounds instead of just constant micro tasks, and finding times to actually turn your brain off so you can mentally recover. I know a lot of people, they work almost like a cow, just grazing the fields all day and then never actually switching off. We want to be more like a lion who hunts, gets their work done 4 or 5 hours, does some admin, and then finishes off so they can actually relax and get that time back. And, spend it with your family, spend it going to the gym, doing whatever you need to do to basically make yourself recover and feel good about yourself. And then number 4, finally, of course, breaking any growth plateaus so we can get back to scaling ASAP as possible. So if you're new here, I've worked with 300 plus B2B clients on paid ads, lead generation, scaling, etc. I've launched offers to 278K cash in the first 40 days and helped clients add 6 figures per month to their revenue. Give you a bit of proof here. If you want to see more, go to that website. But let's just be honest here. You probably already know what you should do. There's plenty of gurus. There's plenty of people who can tell you how to do that on YouTube. Probably paid a consultant before, probably worked with an agency. But why aren't you doing all these things that you know you need to do? Let's talk some excuses. Here's some stuff I hear every single day. I don't have time. I lost focus, but I'm back. I was on holiday. I was doing client work. I was hiring. I was putting out fires. I was talking with clients. I was building systems. I was focusing on product. I was doing XYZ thing that doesn't make me money. And that's completely fine. I have no beef with that. I have no issue with that, provided that you want to lose and you want to make no more money. But if you want to make more money than you are right now, then you probably should stop looking for excuses and start coming up with reasons why you can instead of reasons why you can't. So in other words, if you can only do the thing in certain conditions, then you need to focus on creating those conditions rather than saying you can't do the thing. So for example, if I can't block my calendar in the morning because of X, maybe you have kids to take to school, maybe you've got something on, then just do it in the afternoon. For example, I live in Australia. I have a lot of US clients in the USA. 6 a.m. Australian time is 4 p.m. EST. So you can imagine it's quite difficult to do business completely outside of USA hours while in Australia when basically wake up and the business day is over. So you do it in the afternoon. If you can't block 5 hours in a row because you have calls, so you can't do 5 hours of deep work, then just do 1 to 2 hours at a time. If you can think of a reason or problem with you doing a certain activity that will help you reach your goals, for example, blocking out a few hours on your calendar, you need to focus on coming up with a solution for that rather than focusing on the problem. For example, if you can't go to Spain because you don't speak Spanish, you need to say, if I want to go to Spain, then I'll need to learn some Spanish. It's not, I can't go to Spain because I don't speak Spanish. I need to learn Spanish so I can go to Spain. So if you can't do X because of Y reason, then if you want to do X because you know it's going to help you, it's going to help you grow, I will need to do Z to overcome Y problem. And again, that's not because, going to Spain, you need to speak Spanish. It's just an example. What the point is here is that we can probably agree that money going up equals good here. That means we're probably going to have to do some problem solving to help our situation. But even within that, in terms of blocking some time to actually focus, if you think you can't block some hours of time, do you really think the world is going to explode if you can't reply for 3 hours in the morning? How many times have you not responded for 3 hours and that led to an explosion? Literally put an excuse in the comments. What is a reason why you can't block 3 to 5 hours per day? Because sometimes you're in a process, you need to hire someone. There's a period of time in your business where you can't do this. That's completely fine. However, in those periods of time, you need to focus on bringing someone in so they can help you with that. And if you don't have enough money to bring someone in and you still can't block that time, then that's one of those situations where you just need to do it earlier. You just need to work harder, because there is points in business where there's a crunch between when you have enough money to hire and basically when you don't have enough time to do all the stuff you need to do. They're the times where you need to just batten down the hatches and keep going. Because even if you can only do 2 hours, why not just do 2? 2 is far better and more than 0. Really what you need to look at here is some inversion thinking. If you wanted to not focus and not get any result in your business, let anyone book a call with you at any time, constantly talk to your team and have Slack open. Have 100 tabs open. Don't have a clear plan. Don't prioritize the most important stuff first. Make sure you use as many excuses as you can. Switch between tasks constantly. Load up on sugar and coffee until your stress hits inhumane levels. Go with your gut and just try your best. And don't block any distractions. Just, whatever happens. Just do it that way. Obviously, if you avoided all that stuff, you'd be doing pretty well. So let's just focus on the 80-20. Deciding what stuff to do so you have absolute clarity so you can focus on execution. Number 2, doing the stuff and setting yourself up for success. And number 3, avoiding the dumb stuff, aka don't self-sabotage. So number 1, allocating resources, decision making, planning, deciding where you need to go. Number 2 is actually executing. And then number 3, avoiding the common pitfalls. So when it comes to deciding what to do, we're going to talk about attacking problems and future problems, using numbers and making data-driven decisions while avoiding emotion. Really, when you're doing this, you need to figure out what task is going to give you the highest return on my time per unit of effort. Most people here spend hours and hours on stuff that really could be outsourced for $20 an hour. And you really have to question, how is that going to help make you more money? This is like day one productivity stuff, but I'm going to quickly cover it just in case. So if you've ever read Buy Back Your Time, I personally haven't. I kind of just learned the concept and then ChatGPT'd it. But really, here's the TLDR. Number 1, do a time audit. You can Google how. Number 2, figure out where most of your time goes. Number 3, allocate $1 per hour for each of the tasks you spend time on. Number 4, find where you spend the most time that could be outsourced for the lowest dollar per hour amount, and then never do that thing again. Train someone else to do it and get your time back. So for example, if you find that 5 hours per day is spent talking to clients in Slack, then you absolutely must outsource that to a lower level employee so you can free up your time for more revenue generating tasks. Because really, there's probably 2 or 3 things that you need to do at any given time to grow your business. This part is just about finding where those are so you can allocate energy towards them. Here's the framework. If you think, how would I 10 to 15x my revenue in the next 6 to 12 months? You're probably going to be able to figure out why you couldn't do that. You're probably going to need more sales calls. You're probably going to need to monetize more of your leads. You're probably going to need to increase your show rates, close rates, whatever it may be, operations. There's problems. The worst case scenario is that you have gaping problems. For example, you don't have any wheels and you decide, let's fix the steering wheel. That's how you plateau for 2 years. The best founders say, let's focus hard on fixing the tires, because then when you look at these problems and these things that are stopping you from explosive growth, you remove those blocks and then you unlock the revenue. So when you attack the business by solving specific constraints, that's when you actually end up growing. And the reason for that is because, for example, increasing your close rate from 4 to 8% doubles the business. It's not that hard to do and is therefore the lowest hanging fruit. For example, if Usain Bolt wanted to get from 9.68 to 9.58 seconds on the 100 meter, that's going to take ridiculous amounts of work. Compare that to a noob who might be able to go from 16 seconds to 13 seconds just by fixing up their technique a little bit. They get huge gains, 3 seconds of gains just by doing a couple of key changes. This is the law of diminishing return. So the better you are, the harder it is to improve. Once you've already got a lot of the noob gains, you're already at the top 1%. Very, very difficult to get that last 1%. And the more work that it takes to get those last little gains. And therefore, the amount of bandwidth it takes to improve it and get that last little bit is really, really difficult. So for example, let's say you're trying to get your close rate from 40 to 50%. It's usually harder than getting your close rate from 10 to 20%, even though the literal increase was probably the same. However, we also get a 2x in the second scenario, but only a 25% boost in the first scenario, proportionally going from 40 to 50 versus 10 to 20%. So it looks like it's not that much of a difference, but it's a huge monumental difference in terms of the total amount of money that gets generated in addition. So therefore, we usually get a greater return on time by fixing the worst stuff that's really, really killing us rather than improving the stuff that we're already kind of good at. So when you ask the question, why can't we 10x? Find the actual bottleneck, list all the reasons and make a plan to fix all those things and then track the progress and do the stuff. So for example, you're going to have a list. We need more sales calls. We need to be able to fulfill 300 units. We need to be able to make this many YouTube videos. Those are the reasons that you're not going to 10x. But when you attack those, that's when you can know that you're focusing on the stuff that's actually going to make you money. So otherwise, we're probably going to be focusing on stuff that's not going to help. For example, trying to fix the steering wheel when we don't have any tires. Well, it's not much good because car's not going to go unless you get your tires. So fix that first. Once we figure out the what, we are going to need the how. So for example, I got this from Hormozy. More, better, new. Can I do more of something? Spend more on ads, send more cold emails, more touch points, sales reps, CSMs, hire more people, whatever it may be. Then when doing more doesn't yield more results, just do better. So offer, sales process, testing more creative, better sales training, hiring better people, better funnel conversions, better fulfillment, better product, whatever it may be. Then when those 2 things are exhausted, do something new. This stuff is basically determining the tasks, the actual things that you need to do to solve the constraint. So for example, if you say, I need better content so I can book more calls, then what does that actually mean? What can I do? I might need better titles, better thumbnails. I might need more utility in the videos. I might need better videos. I might need better hooks. I might need better edits. I might need faster value and more actionable information. And the thing is, if that sounds like work, it's because it is. And you don't necessarily have to do this yourself. That's why you use a team, you use consultants, you use agencies. If your constraint is that you don't get views on content or you don't get enough top of funnel leads, you need to ask, how do I fix my lead flow? And then just do all of the stuff that would help you fix it. That might require you to hire an expert. That might require you to grow your team. That might require time, energy, and effort. Much, much better to do that and spend the money, put the effort in, try your hardest than say, I already know how to do this thing. Because the reality is, if you already knew how to fix it, it wouldn't be a constraint. So for example, if my sales process completely sucks and I close at 10%, you can just pay someone with a specific goal of fixing that problem. And then let's say you pay them $10,000. They unlock a 2x in revenue by getting you to a 20% close rate. That is pretty worth it in my opinion. However, there's a massive warning here that it's really easy to misdiagnose the problem. I've seen a lot of people where they put all their energy in one direction, but the problem is that they end up seeing the wrong problem as the main thing. So they waste time on the wrong thing. That is where you need to track your KPIs and stats to be able to see what is right and what is wrong. Without being able to track these things like your close rate, how many calls you're booking, your content output, your results in general, without tracking that stuff to help you make decisions, it's literally the same thing as going through space, like outer space, and trying to use a janky compass to try and figure out where to go. The prerequisite for all of this is the tracking that can inform the decision making and tell you where to go. Like I said, without the tracking, you're basically just guessing what to do. You're going to start saying things like, I feel like our close rate is low, or I feel like our sales process is bad. And that is going to lead you directly running in circles because you're just solving all this random shit rather than identifying this thing is killing us. I can tell because of these exact statistics, and then focusing on those things, unlocking them, then growing like crazy. Massive difference between those things. Then once you have your strategy lined up, break it down into a list of tasks, write them down, then execute. So like I said, better thumbnails, better titles, better XYZ. That's going to help you. List it out. Next, now you've got your list, ruthless execution. So once you've got your tasks ready, you need to wake up and destroy the tasks. There's 2 keys of task completion. Number 1 is focus. Number 2 is standards. So here are 16 quick fire hacks that help me focus. Number 1, brutal honesty with yourself. So find your weakness. Personally, I'll admit task switching kills me. So if I have 10 things to do, I'm absolutely liable to try and do 5 things at once instead of just doing one thing until completion. So what I do is, instead of coping and telling myself, you don't task switch, you're as optimized as you possibly could be, I just say, fuck, like if I'm task switching all the time, that's really killing my productivity. And I need to just put that at the forefront of my mind that I'm going to do something until it's complete and not allow myself to do anything other than that. For example, if you always go on Instagram when you're meant to be working, then just be honest with yourself and get a social media blocking app. Don't lie to yourself. This is where you absolutely get killed. You need brutal honesty with yourself, and you need to find your weakness and then remove it. And that's the second point, is that removal is better than restriction. So rather than, trying to say, I'm just going to go on Instagram for 10 minutes a day, especially when you're first trying to build the habit of fixing your main weakness when it comes to focus, just remove it and get it completely out of the area. I know people that literally will put their phone in their car until 1 p.m. just so they don't go on it because they're that addicted to their phone. And you might laugh at that and say, well, that's pretty dumb. But in reality, if that's what you need to do to be able to focus, do that, because all your revenue is on the other side of fixing this problem. So just remove it. Number 3, you're obviously going to need 7 to 8 hours of sleep. This is like Huberman 101. The thing that unlocked this for me in terms of sleep was always having an end of day routine. So what I would typically do would just work up until I would sleep. I would have dinner at my desk, then I would just literally shut my laptop and go to sleep straight away. And that would lead to basically taking 2 hours to fall asleep. I would be restless. My sleep quality would be worse. Even if I slept for 8 hours, I would end up getting shit sleep anyway. However, as soon as I implemented this, it's funny, I literally started having dreams again. Like as soon as I got this end of day routine, my sleep just became so much deeper, literally immediately overnight. I wear a Whoop. My Whoop scores went through the roof. And literally all it was planning the next day, turning off all my computers and phone, walking my dog, having a shower, like doing basic stuff, then maybe reading 10 to 20 minutes before bed, and that 10x my sleep. This takes like 30 to 60 minutes. One thing that you can implement, absolutely crucial for sleep. Next, oftentimes working before anything else is really, really important. I like to do a bit of cardio before I work, but getting the work done as a high priority as soon as you wake up and tracking the amount of time it takes you to complete your core task for the day is really, really important. Then once you work, I like to work with a 60-minute timer. So I'll literally get a timer on my screen, 60 minutes, basically just work until the timer runs out. That'll be 60 minutes. Then I'll have a 10 to 15 minute break, and I'll do 5 timed hours of work per day. And then I'll write down in this book, literally handwritten, hey, what'd you do in hour 1? What'd you do in hour 2? What'd you do in hour 3? And then what happens is you have a log of exactly what you're focused on. So not only can you retroactively look at what you're focusing on and analyze if you're focusing on the right things, but you can also have some level of accountability to, if you don't do 5 hours, it's like something happened, like something is wrong if you didn't get 5 hours. Next, caffeine and 2 milligrams of nicotine gum for work sessions. I never take more than 2 milligram nicotine gums in a day, and I also never use it every day. So I'll cycle it on, have it daily for a few weeks and then not have it for a few weeks, but they're the stimulants of choice for me. And then number 6, shifting my entire schedule to fit around work hours. So for example, example, if I want to work from 6 a.m. onwards, everything else in my life will fit around that. That means maybe I need to have dinner pretty early. Everyone in my life might know I go to sleep quite early. And then, there's a public expectation that I'm only going to be able to do certain things at certain times because I'm busy from X to Y. So whether that means clients understand that you're not going to reply in certain hours, your parents and family and friends and all those people, your partner, they're going to know that, you can't get to me at ABC time. You need to kind of set this expectation because, one of the biggest draws away from work is going to be the people in your life, the distractions you have. But if you set a public expectation, it's really not unreasonable to say, hey, just message me like after 11 a.m. I'll be available. Or hey, between 11 and 4, I'm typically unavailable. Just message me this time. Because people understand that you have work and stuff. So just say, I'm not going to be available. Get everyone to understand. Number 7, I found in my situation, I'm from Australia again, like I said, blocking 5 hours straight, sometimes annoying. I often couldn't focus well in the 4th and 5th hours, particularly if I'd already taken a bunch of calls that day with my clients from the US. Now, what I do is 2 to 3 hours of focused work. Then I'll have some more calls. Then I'll probably go to the gym. Then I'll do another few hours after that. The effect of that is it kind of just breaks it up. Anything you need to attend to in the middle of those 5 hours, you can get that done. Things in the business, talk to employees, whatever it may be. And it can also help you get more hours done. A little bit of a refresher before you get stuck in. Next, I try to make sure I look at light early in the morning. This is like one of the worst things, obviously from Andrew Huberman. More sunlight just gets your circadian rhythm set. I just literally open my window and just look directly at the sun just to avoid going on my phone. Going on your phone, honestly, it's just one of the worst things that you can do in the morning. I know if you're a business owner, same as me, you want to look at Slack, you want to look at your sales channel, you want to look at any clients messaging or anything important. But the thing is, when you open it first thing in the morning, what it does is it just makes your brain crave cheap dopamine throughout the day. I've done a massive difference between when I would just literally stare at the sun like a full-on human maxer first thing in the morning. It made a big difference in terms of how easy it was to focus. Obviously, you'd still force yourself to sit at your desk, but in terms of how easy it is to focus, it was a big difference between, doing the whole morning routine thing where you wake up, go for a walk, drink some water, whatever it may be. That is actually valuable. So big Huberman guy over here. Number 9, having a plan, absolutely essential. If you sit down at your desk and you don't know what to do, pretty much screwed in my experience. So make sure you know what you're doing, plan it out the day before, put it part of your end of day routine that you're going to plan the next day's tasks. Number 10, calm brain. So if you're scatterbrained and you really struggle to focus, I would just meditate for 10 to 15 minutes and clear your head. A lot of times your actual nervous system is something that kind of controls your ability to focus. A lot of time if you're just trying to rage through a million tasks, you're kind of white knuckling the steering wheel, you're never going to be able to do a task until completion. It's called task switching. One of my biggest weaknesses, like I said, and really the only way to solve this was just doing meditation or breath work. Just calm down before you try and work. And be aware of things like cortisol levels, which are basically your hormones for stress. If your stress levels are too high, you're going to really struggle to focus. So you want to reduce your cortisol to a healthy level. It's good to have a little bit of stress to, get stimulated. For example, too much coffee is bad. Having a good amount of coffee is good. What I noticed is that when I'm the most focused, my heart rate is quite low. It's not like I'm at my desk really doing anything. It's like you're just in a flow state. So if your mind's racing, you're all over the shop, so busy, overwhelmed, just calm down. Go do a meditation, go for a walk, hit a hard reset and just try and get your brain to chill out. Number 11, if you have a goal to do the 5 hours of work, you need to view it as a minimum. This just basically becomes a minimum standard. And some people view it as an unachievable hurdle and they look at it like, I could never do 5 hours of timed work because I've got to do this much client work. And that's a really fast way to never actually be able to do it. But it's just a belief thing. I can tell you, I've done 5 hours of timed work every single day without fail for at least the last 6 months, I think, except for when I got the flu. So it's one of those things where you can either be on the team of people that's like, oh no, that's completely impossible, I'm never going to be able to do that. Or you can join the team of people that say, oh, well, that sounds like it'd be pretty beneficial. I'm going to figure out how I'm going to do that and have it as a minimum standard. Because after the first 3 or 4 months, it becomes easy. It's not even difficult for me to do 5 hours of timed work these days. At the start, of course, you have to work up. You can't focus. You realize how little work you're actually doing. And then over time, you just get better and better at it. As soon as you view it as, I'm going to do this, this is a minimum standard that I have for myself, it becomes a little bit easier. Number 12, I like to do 20, 30 minutes of cardio and get in the sauna for 20 to 30 minutes as part of my exercise routine. This just keeps your brain sharp, keeps you lean. Number 13, personally don't love lights on while I'm working. I like a little bit of natural light, but I'm just more locked in without them. Number 14, make sure to take your breaks. So one thing I often screwed up was I would do my 60 minutes, I would sit at my desk and not have a break and try and do the next one. But come to hour 3, 4, 5, this just kills you. You need to take your 10-minute breaks every 60 minutes. Then number 15, another thing I messed up quite commonly was whenever I would do my 60 minutes, and then I did take my break, I would lose a little bit too much time in transition. So most of the time, you'll be working, switch between work and break, or switching between tasks. This absolutely kills your ability to get your work done. Try and avoid this. And again, when I say try and avoid it, as soon as you become conscious of it, it's much easier. Like, you just have to be aware, because like I said, when I first started doing this, I wasn't aware at all. I would just kind of go for a break, end up losing so much time, and I'd be like, where'd the time go? Like, it's 4 p.m. I didn't even do anything. I'd be like, well, your 10-minute break turned into a 17-minute break, and then you don't get much done, and then you're behind, then you got to take a call, and then you're delayed, and then it's 6 p.m. and you're like, well, shit, nothing happened. So keep that in mind. Number 16, glucose regulation. So this is massive. If I ever have a massive meal at like 11 a.m., probably takes me like 2 hours to recover from that. So I don't like to spike my carbs too much, make me slow and foggy in my experience. So I typically just eat in a rather like intuitive way. Coffee and fasting makes me sharp. Protein and fats typically keep me going. I'm not saying don't eat carbs. Obviously, be aware of how they make you focus and how they work for you. I usually like something like scrambled eggs after I finish a lot of my work. For dinner, I'll have a steak or some kind of meat-based dish. For snacks, I'll lean towards fruit, protein, yogurt, things like that do quite well. And then the bonus tip is obviously momentum. So in the morning, I like to have a little bit of a warm-up. So I know I have to do my newsletter. I'm probably going to have to reply to a bunch of messages, and I'm probably going to have to do a bit of writing before anything else. And I can just use those as momentum building tasks. So I'll do those first thing, get rolling, and then do my heavier tasks in hour 2 and 3. And that basically rattles them off. In terms of standards, this is a massively important thing. When you're talking about focus and productivity and getting things done, you have to know that we're never going to rise to the level of expectations. We just fall to the level of our training. It's the same with standards. So like I said, with the 5 hours, if you view it as, I'm going to be, this is my absolute goal. It's like, that's completely different to just saying, this is my minimum. I'm minimum going to do 5. I'll probably do 6 or 7 if I'm really doing well. And really, to define this, it's an agreed upon set of rules, guidelines, or characteristic for activities or their results. So it's basically an accepted practice or requirement and quality for a certain field. Basically, the most powerful and important thing for every person and organization. And unfortunately, there's really low standards everywhere. Look at someone like Elon Musk. So his team would tell him like, it's going to take 10 years to build this rocket ship. And he's like, why don't we do it in 6 months? That's a crazy standard. And maybe it took them 8 months, I think, in terms of building that rocket ship. So they didn't hit his goal, but they certainly got it way, way quicker than doing it in 10 years. So bring that standard way, way through the roof. So here's an example. When you're in a rut, it's not as if you go out in the street and start smoking meth or doing heroin. And that's probably because you've trained your minimum standard, and going and doing meth on the street is likely below what you've trained yourself to do. Maybe when you're in a rut, or you're not completely attacking life, maybe you just end up fulfilling your work and then watching YouTube, and you just don't do that much stuff. So what you'll know is that the best companies and organizations just raise their minimum to be way above their competition. So for example, again, if you've watched a Michael Jordan documentary, you'll see he gets angry at his teammates for being below standards and low work ethic. And that doesn't necessarily mean he's a dick, but that just shows you how you want to raise the minimum of the company, yourself, and your employees as well. Again, absolute minimum should be 5 hours of time to work. And the higher standard you have, the higher your minimum is going to be. So the higher your minimum is, the better you'll be over a long time period. So a checkpoint here is, what are your company standards? Do you stick to them? Does your team stick to them? And the spoiler alert here is, if you're the CEO, you set the standards. So if you have low standards in your company, a lot of times that means you're the one showing up late. You're the one missing your inputs. You're the one not doing what you have to do, because everyone in the company follows you, and you're meant to hold everyone accountable. So if you don't use your time properly and you don't rigorously follow the standards, how is the team going to follow the standards? It just doesn't happen. When it comes to instilling them, for example, an employee talks shit about a client to you after the client is rude to them. At their old job, they would routinely talk shit about clients and other team members when the client wasn't around. Question here is, what do you do? If you have a standard that you treat the clients a certain way, then obviously you're going to say, hey, we don't talk shit about clients here. However, if your company standard is lower than that, then that won't exist. So an important note here is that any deviation from the company standard is deadly. So a single deviation is like a fracture, because let's say you don't correct that employee when they're talking shit about a client. It doesn't take too many of those before it just becomes normal. The minimum is accepted, and it becomes a new minimum. You can pretty much think of this as what's normalized in a company. It's kind of like core values, but a bit broader and more specific. For example, if you go look at investment bank or like a private equity firm, a lot of the employees are just expected to work 80 hours a week. And if you don't show up to the office at 7 a.m. and leave at like 10 p.m., it's weird. Like, you're the outsider. You're almost going to get looked at like a weirdo just because you're not doing 80 hours a week. Compare that to maybe your company. Is that what's expected? Is that what's normal? Is that what people just do? And it's probably not, because it's quite rare, but it's just something to think about. And again, my background is in sports. I used to be a bit of an athlete in my younger days. So I used to play football. I played at some decently high levels, couple levels below professional, but I got to see a lot of the guys that would be AFL players, which is the Australian Football League, and eventually reach pro. And I was a part of a lot of different teams that would have different standards of training. And it was very abundant when you would go to a training session with the absolute best. They would be taking that shit so seriously. They would be doing everything. They would be hitting every single kick. They would be running around every cone exactly to a T. And that was just the minimum standard. And then you would go maybe back to your regional league or your local team, and the training standard would be so much lower. You'd miss a kick, jog through the cone. You'd probably cheat on the line a little bit, and you wouldn't really care. AKA you being like the team. This was just the standard. So you can see there's a massive difference between taking something seriously and having something as a minimum standard that's really, really high compared to just really not giving that much of a expletive and just kind of going about your business on a day-to-day. The thing is here, if you are an A player, you love high standards. So here's what happens when you hold someone accountable. They either get fired because they can't keep up, or they will become way too competent, skilled, talented, disciplined, and inspired to continue working for you. And they'll either stay with you for a bigger salary or start their own business or another job for a massive salary as well. So again, I mentioned private equity. I have a friend who is in private equity, and he was telling me how, he's been a high performer his whole life, crushed school, got great grades, got into this investment bank. And he was surprised because they didn't even really gas him up that much. They didn't really care that much that he was such a high performer. They were kind of like, yeah, dude, just keep going. Like, you're meant to be going way harder than this anyway. And he was like, that kind of pissed me off because I'm meant to be this guy that's an absolute killer that gets insane results in every field of his life. And I said, well, how did that make you feel? And he said, well, that just made me, I just wanted to go so much harder. It wasn't as if him getting held accountable and pushed to a high standard made him upset, or it didn't make him annoyed, or it didn't make him hate the person that gave him those standards. It made him think, I'm going to work so damn hard. I'm going to absolutely crush whatever standard they have. And I just thought, no shit, this guy's a career A player. No shit, he's going to absolutely crush the rest of his career. And this guy's like 21 for context as well. So it's not as if he's, 35-year-old. This is completely out of reach. This is just a regular dude who got great grades, who works really hard, who has a great engine and a great work ethic. There is no reason that you cannot get these people in your company. And there's no reason that you can't be one of those people either. And again, it's not some buzzword bullshit. You should expect this from your team and from yourself as well. It's kind of like what people say, if you want to make 8 figures, you have to become the person who can make 8 figures first. Or if you want to make a certain amount or you want to do a certain thing, you have to become the person that can do that. And then the standards are the thing that are actually at work in those instances. It's because the type of person has a certain type of standard, and the standards will carry you to the level that you deserve and no further. Hope that makes sense. The reason that matters is because you have to set your own bar for the work you're doing, because no one's holding you accountable. So the people above you that in business that you may not see, they could be doing 10, 20, or 100 times the work as you, and it's just normal for them because they've trained themselves over the years. So again, here's some quick tips. Never say you're going to do something, then fail to do it. Never accept low standards. Continually raise your standards over time. Try to get exposed to some hard workers. If everyone around you does it a certain way, it's pretty easy to do. Number 5, never settle. So if you have B players on the team, it lowers the standards. Every single day that goes by with a fracture in those standards, the more they degrade and the lower the minimum gets. Then number 6, simply do not allow yourself to do less than 5 hours of timed work. Why would you ever do less than that? It's absolutely insane to me. I would never accept that as an outcome personally. So avoiding the falls. This is one of the most important parts. Common mistakes that I see here: ego, drifting, burnout, emotion, limiting beliefs, pivoting, impulses, and bias. Let's get straight in. Ego. So a lot of people tell me, I already know how to do X. I already know how to do cold email. I already know how to do paid ads. I already know how to hire someone. And the question I ask is, let's say you're an NBA player. Does that mean you know how to ride a horse? Obviously not. So that's the same for people who think they know how to do everything just because they found success with a certain thing. Example, let's say you made $5 million a year and you got all your traffic from organic content. Does that mean you're good at cold email or paid ads? Probably not. Completely different thing. Realistically, unless you've had time to master every single skill, there's probably stuff that you don't know. And in that case, instead of going into conversations or programs or going on YouTube and just thinking, what can I possibly learn? Just open your mind and assume that you don't know anything. It's been really helpful for me, especially when I'm having conversations with someone who maybe they look pretty unassuming and then they turn out to have sold a company. I'm like, damn, I've had a really interesting conversation with this person. All of a sudden it turns out they have a really interesting work backstory as well. And you can pick up tricks from these people a ton. And again, even if it just doesn't make you look like a dick, worst case scenario, you don't learn anything from someone, but you just look humble. Best case scenario, you look humble and learn something. So there's no reason to really go about life thinking that you know stuff. So if you have this delusion that you're insanely good, that you think, I know everything, there's nothing else to learn, which is a real thing. I talk to a lot of founders. This makes you way more susceptible to blind spots. So bad product and you aren't aware of it. Let's say your clients talk shit in their group chats and you're not aware of it because you think your product is great. Trust me, I see this a lot. A lot of people that I've even had as clients will have their clients talk to me about how bad they are, and then they're under the impression that their product is great. So that's really bad. Number 2, clients are churning and you have a huge churn rate, but you're ignoring it because it's a blind spot and you think think your product is great. Bang. You have no idea what to do next to fix your problems, but you still maintain that everything's fine because you're just blissfully unaware that everything's great. And then number 4, you couldn't close for shit, but you still think you're good at sales, and you always blame it on the leads. That's another good example. So here's a little secret. Whenever someone's ever scaled a company really, really quickly, there is a strong element of luck. Whether that means Facebook ads were really cheap at the time, whether that means there was a traffic arbitrage where you could get really cheap traffic from one channel, there was some sort of alignment that allowed them to grow that quickly at that specific moment. And that doesn't mean that they aren't as good as they appear because they had luck. It just means that luck is built in. So if you go about life and say, well, I'm this good because I scaled this company to this level, it's like, well, how lucky were you? Like, how much of that result was actually you and being attributed to you? And this is something I always say to myself, like, yeah, I've been involved with some great companies. A lot of times they would have gotten their results without even me being there, you know? Like, for example, I have a client who went from like 40K a month to 2 mil a year. I didn't even ever mention it because really all I did was just talk to him a few times, give him some key insights. He just kind of went off on his own, got his own results. And it's like, you can either say, yeah, well, I got this result because XYZ joined my program, or XYZ is a client of mine. Or you can just say, damn, that guy's a killer. He took some great stuff. I can learn a lot from him. He might have taken this, and this is the part that really had the biggest impact. And then I can go and use just the stuff that was the biggest impact, take the stuff that I learned from that client, and then go and apply that to the next deal. So again, don't scale one company and then never admit there was an element of luck. Really, really foolish. The reason this occurs is because most people really, really interested in status and maintaining their image that they have of themselves in their head rather than facing the reality that they need to improve. Again, that's pretty dumb because that prevents you from getting better. Really nothing wrong with not being good enough and making mistakes. A lot of people that watch this channel are probably pretty young. I know I'm pretty young, and there's really nothing wrong with just admitting that, again, there's luck, there's clients you learn from, there's shortcomings you have, there's problems you create yourself and mistakes you make, and not admitting these things just hurts you and your business and takes longer to get results. So when it comes to ego, everyone else can see your blind spots. So employees, clients, they laugh at you behind your back. I've literally seen employees and clients do this to people, and oftentimes they're going to churn pretty soon. You will not be able to see problems and fix them fast enough as a result of this. You will make incorrect decisions because you think you're right. You will miss out on good ideas because you think you're smarter than other people, for example, employees or whatever it may be. And the company's going to end up relying on you too much because you're not going to be able to let go. Often that leads to micromanaging, which leads to an inability to scale because you're too scared of letting someone else take control because you think you're so much smarter. And then you're not going to be able to manage a team properly if you're scared to give other people credit. So for example, you don't want to say, hey, you did such a good job, that was all you. If you don't do that and you say, wow, this company's so great because it was all me, they're going to hate you, they're going to leave, they're going to go somewhere they're appreciated. And then the last thing is you won't take responsibility for shortcomings, which prevents you from fixing them, i.e. can't admit fault. And that leads to recurring problems, which basically means you're running in circles. So even further to that, not going to be able to take advice. You're going to think XYZ rule of the universe doesn't apply to me because you're so special. You are wrong. And you're going to lie to yourself and cope. So for example, I couldn't build the funnel because I was working on product ops, hiring, whatever else. And in reality, it's just a reason that you give to yourself that you are so good at justifying because of the ego. Again, best founder traits. I went to one of Hormozi's workshops. I asked Layla Hormozi one question. I said, what is the thing that separates people like yourself who grow really quickly from people who stagnate forever? And she said, being self-aware, not quitting, then eventually getting lucky, not having an outsized ego, being humble, caring, and loving to take care of their team. And they don't want to stop. They have insatiable hunger, and they have stoic and unemotional decision, and they're transparent and direct. The biggest thing she stressed was pretty much being self-aware enough to not quit and then eventually get lucky and just continually improve. She was like, the number one thing is just being able to really be honest with yourself about what you need to do, what you need to improve, and how you're going to get better. Because obviously if you do that and you're constantly improving, you're constantly taking advice, etc., then you're just in this kind of positive feedback loop compared to just always thinking that you're the GOAT and getting no results. It's fucking terrible, honestly. Next, we have drifting. So this concept is from a book called Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill, who also wrote Think and Grow Rich. This book actually got banned from a lot of places, I think. But basically drifting is being in a state of aimlessness and a lack of purpose. When you drift, this is when you kind of have no clear direction, kind of makes you susceptible to negative influences in a way, prevents you from achieving your full potential. So a good example is, maybe you're an agency owner who left your 9 to 5. Maybe you hated your job, so you started an agency. Then eventually you reach 40K per month. Once you get there, take your foot off the gas, don't even realize what's happening. And then, you go out a little more, you fulfill the bare minimum for clients, talk to your team, minimum instead of growing the business. And then you basically aimlessly show up every day because you don't really need to go anywhere. You've got enough money. You've got all the stuff that you do. You're kind of just waiting in a way. This sounds like something that you can resonate with. I know for sure. sure. I know a lot of people like this where you just get to this stage where it's not like you're happy, but it's not like you're unhappy either. You're just kind of okay. And this kills your productivity. You're going to get to the desk. You're not going to get anything done. And you're definitely not going to attack the tasks that you need to complete with the same level of intensity that you'll, basically need to scale. So how to avoid this? Remind yourself of why you do stuff. For example, get a major definite purpose. Learn about that. If you want, DM me on Instagram. I'll send you an example of it and basically show you what it is. Number 2, use planning. Number 3, rely on a sharp routine and habits. Number 4, have an accountability plan. And number 5, take decisive action. Drifting is basically like when you're floating around in the water. It's the complete opposite of moving with pace in one direction because you know exactly what you need to do, how you need to do it, and why you're doing it. I'd much rather be moving with a strong purpose and a strong why I'm doing things. So again, with the major definite purpose, it sounds like hippie bullshit and it sounds like I completely get it. Well, you're probably one of those people that's really logical. I know I lean that way as well. However, if you just have no reason to make more money, then you will get to a point where you just don't have any desire to do anything. So you need to consistently grow the vision that you have for yourself and your own life as you grow up. Because I know certainly I never knew anyone that would make multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars per month when I was a kid. Absolutely no way. My family was, decently well off. We were never really struggling. But it wasn't as if there was just rich people everywhere and it was just normal to make a bunch of money. So you need to remind yourself all of these things of what do you want from life? What's your goal? And you know what? You might even find you don't need to make more money. You don't need to do anything too extra. You might just want to reach a certain level and then chill, and that's where you're fulfilled. That's completely fine. But again, that doesn't mean that you're drifting. That means you're enjoying your life. You've achieved your goals. So just keep that in mind. You really need to call yourself out. Do you care about what you're doing? Why do you do what you do? Did you just make up some bullshit goals that you want to hit 100K a month that have no meaning? Pretty essential here that you're pursuing a direction for a reason. Even if you're just obsessed with growing and obsessed with making money, it's actually not even a bad thing. You just don't want to be drifting and waiting around, kind of hovering at the level that you're at, because it absolutely sucks. This happens all the time. It leads to burnout. So when it comes to burnout, a lot of times that comes when you're trying to go too hard uphill. So meaning you're probably working hard-ish. You're probably just doing stuff and it's not working. And in those cases, you need to think of it objectively and reassess your strategy. My guess would be if you're printing money from the sky, you probably wouldn't be that worried about how you feel. You'd probably be completely fine with it. But if that was in a field that you didn't care about, if you were doing stuff that was, felt like such an effort, a lot of times it's kind of an emotional thing, it's a stress thing, and it's a losing thing where you constantly take L's as well. But when it comes to getting a checklist, a lot of times I just look to the physiological side. So how am I sleeping? Am I gymming? Am I doing cardio? Do I eat the right foods? Do I do cortisol inducing stuff like coffee, high stress stuff? Do I meditate? Do I drink too much coffee, alcohol, drugs, whatever it may be? Not me, but maybe you. Do I wind down at the end of the day? Or do I just go straight to sleep? Do I take my 10-minute breaks after my work block? Because really, whenever I feel burnt out, if I'm sleeping, if I'm gymming, if I'm doing cardio, if my diet's right, if I'm not having too much coffee, if I'm doing meditation, if I'm doing float tanks, if I'm doing walks, if I'm not drinking, definitely not doing drugs. If you're doing drugs at any time while running your business, you may as well just you're just nerfing yourself. Like you're just killing your own ability to scale. Am I doing my end of day routine? Am I taking breaks? Am I changing my location every couple of months to kind of stimulate, the brain and things like that? So if I'm doing those things, I'm pretty much not burnt out. As long as I'm going in a direction that I want to be going in, very difficult to be burnt out while doing those things. And again, it's an emotional thing sometimes. So you kind of have to be stoic and unemotional. Big spoiler alert here is that it can get stressful. There are times where you will get emotional. Clients will piss you off. You'll have churn. You'll have problems in your business. If you're already an emotional person, you need to get used to this because you're going to get the added stress. You need to really become as stable as possible and minimize your outbursts or any rash decision making. It sounds obvious, but you really have to remind yourself of this. Like I said, I can't tell you how many times I'll work with a client and they'll just say, I feel like my sales process is wrong. I feel like this employee isn't working. I feel like this stuff is happening. And it's like, if you want to run around in circles, go based off your emotion and be erratic and just do random shit, because that's a one-way ticket to plateau. Anytime you feel panicked, you really just have to learn to regulate yourself as well. So if that means meditate, that means go for a walk. If that means going to a Tony Robbins seminar, just go do that. Because if you're emotional, you're having like an outburst, you're all up and down, your team's never going to respect you, clients will never respect you, and you're going to make consistently bad decisions. And all of those things hurt your company. Really not a made up thing to just not make emotional decisions. The reason people say it's just business is because you have to make an unemotional decision for the business. That saying did not come from thin air. And I'll ask you that. Do you think the it's just business saying came from thin air? If you agree that it didn't, you're going to need to kind of separate the emotion from the business. You need to treat the business and the company as if it's a separate entity to yourself. So a really strong thing you can do is just treat your company like it's a baby. Like literally, like I need to get food for my baby. I need to get my baby to sleep. I need to get my baby to do X. Like for example, with your business, if you're treating your business like your baby, like a completely separate entity enemy that you had to nurture and take care of, you would act a little bit differently when it comes to how emotional you are and emotional decisions. So again, we need to fire X. I feel like they don't do anything. Why aren't we booking more calls? I feel like we're not getting leads. I hate our clients. They're all shit and know nothing. We need better ones. Yeah, I've just been working super hard and getting nothing done. I feel more stressed than ever. These things are emotions. Sometimes those emotions can be leading indicators towards a decision that you need to make. So I wouldn't just shut it down. Like obviously your gut can tell you valuable insights, but the thing you have to know here is that you have to go and back that up with data as well. You can't just make shit up and then make decisions based off it. Then another thing that kills your productivity is limiting beliefs. So your beliefs about work and what you can do, always there. They're always preventing you from getting to the next level. And the reason for this is because your beliefs will directly drive your action. So for example, if you think a niche is saturated, you're not going to pursue it. If you believe it's saturated, you're not going to pursue it. Meanwhile, that niche might be red hot. So in terms of beliefs, you need to look at these. You need to analyze what's affecting you. So number one, what do I believe is a normal amount of work? What do I believe I can achieve? Do I believe I deserve success? Do I believe I'm good enough to build a big business? Do I believe I'm good enough to make content? Do I believe it's okay to fail? Do I believe I can do anything I want? Do I believe getting clients and growing my business is super hard or super easy? Do I need other people's approval? Do I subconsciously seek validation all the time? These are the questions you want to be asking. So literal action item here, write down 5 to 10 beliefs that you think could limit you. For example, some of mine have or are, my track record isn't as good as my business partners, so he should make most of the content. I'm too young. I need to have a bigger track record to make content. I need to prove myself more. I need to make more money, and making money is hard. I need to differentiate my services so much. I need to do all this stuff to earn the money and really prove myself. They're mine. So just fully transparently, that's the stuff that I think about that's like, holds me back. So if I fall victim to those things, that's going to lead to me not making content. That's going to lead to me not sharing my information and my knowledge that I know is deep down very valid. And number 3, that's going to lead to me subconsciously seeking validation from clients, from people online, from employees, etc., which absolutely kills you. So you need to solve these the same way that I've solved these, the same way that other people have solved these, which is just write them down and just discuss them with people and just say, is this a real thing? How do I feel about this? Am I going to let this hold me back? And then essentially, this is what I do, is I write down my limiting beliefs and then I think, how would I act if I didn't believe that thing? Like if I didn't believe I'm too young, what would I act like? If I didn't believe that making money is hard, how would I act? And then I just act that way. Then eventually it just goes away, which is super cool. In terms of pivoting, this was one of the last things. If you're thinking of changing your offer or your service, I made a full 12-minute video about how to go about this. So DM me on Instagram. I'll send you the link to that video. I don't want to make this too long. It's a full-on, if this, then that type thing. 12 minutes, like I said, definitely worth looking at. TLDR, pivoting is a waste of time. They waste months and years. So most of the time it's just based on a feeling that, your problems are bad. You only really want to pivot when you're in pain about your current problems, and you're likely unaware of the problems of the other vehicle that you want to pivot towards. So it's basically the same as when you get back with an ex. The reason you break up is because of X, Y, and Z problems. Then after you spend some time away, you become less aware of the problems that cause you to break up. And then you think, actually that ex wasn't that bad. Let's get back together. And then spoiler alert, 9 times out of 10, not a good idea. And then also, this applies to strategies you're using. So for example, if you freak out and quit after your ads don't hit KPI for the first time, that is going to really prevent you from getting results. I'll give you an example. Literally recently, launched a client on their ads. Their cost per call was 2 to 3 times as expensive as I wanted it to be. I think they're about $500 cost per call. That was Thursday and Friday of Black Friday. And it would have been really easy to say, oh shit, that's bad. 2 to 3x the costs. It was a new client as well that I just launched. So obviously don't want to get shit results for a new client. So you want to move quickly, fix it quickly. But I was like, you know what? I'm just going to wait one day. That one day later that I waited ended up cutting the cost per call to exact KPI down to like $100. And all of a sudden we're back in KPI and we're golden. So really what you need to know is that patience is a huge virtue, especially in this game of online business, especially when you're dealing with a lot of young people, which a lot of us are. And you just ask yourself, if you did this stuff for 10 years, would it probably work? If yes, continue. Great way to avoid pivoting is just really ask yourself, if you weren't struggling with this problem, would I still want to pivot? Do I understand that I'm likely setting myself back by a number of months and years by pivoting, depending on what you're pivoting to and from? Do I deeply understand the problems of the new venture, or does it just seem like it's a really easy sunshine and rainbows? Have I ran a fact check on the new thing? AKA, have I talked to people in the niche who are doing that thing? And again, do I understand I'm giving away all my experience to focus on the new thing and basically becoming a beginner again? Next, impulses. So if you're overweight, of course, you have urges to go and, go get some KFC, go get some cake. And that just means you're listening to your lizard brain. That doesn't mean that that's a good idea. That means your lizard brain is telling you, go and do X. And there are a ton of impulses you can get. And very few of them are actually that smart. So for example, impulse, fire that guy, eat sugary food, go on holiday, give up, break up with girlfriend and go to Miami. We briefly covered this in the presentation, but eating badly, making dumb purchases, making bad decisions in personal life, self-sabotaging, this is all just an impulse from your lizard brain. And what your lizard brain wants to do is not always what what's best for you. So you have to control your impulses and quieten them. One way I used to do this when I was back when I was running a lot. For context, quick flex, my PB for a 5K is like 18 minutes 50. So that's a good time. It's not the best, but it's a good time. So I know what I'm talking about here. As soon as I, would think in my brain to quit, which would happen all the time, I would just premeditate my, desire to quit. And I would say, I know at about 12 minutes into this, I'm going to be in pain. I'm going to be in maximum pain. Lactic acid's going to be in my legs. I'm going to be feeling like shit. But I need to know that beforehand. And I'm going to just say, I'm going to immediately override that impulse to quit and just say, don't quit every single time. And that worked really, really well because I know every time I do a 5K, it's the worst. I don't run as much anymore because of that reason. It sucks. But if you go into it and say, I know I'm not going to quit. I'm just not doing it. So as soon as I hit the impulse, I'm not going to quit. Works great. So for example, let's say you always go on your phone. You have an impulse to just go in your pocket and go on your phone. What you do is you say, when I reach for my phone, I'm going to install a factory setting into my own brain that when I reach for it, I'm going to get rid of it. Really, really simple and simplifies it, but it actually works. Other ways you can do this is by using literal apps to block yourself. So for example, a self-control app on your computer blocks social media sites. You can say to your business partner, anytime either of us wants to do anything except fix this problem, the other person has to say no. You can get your phone out of your room. You can get junk food out of the house, completely remove the access and train your brain to identify those triggers. And when the trigger arises, just say, no, that is stupid. In your own head, of course, don't go crazy by talking to yourself. Now, we're getting to the end, I promise. But when it comes to bias kind of comes over ego, which we covered at length. So I don't need to go too deep here. What I would like to say, though, is that the closer you are with reality, the more powerful you become. So in other words, the more accurately you can see the world for what it is, the easier it is for you to get the results that you want. For example, some people might say, you are not qualified enough to do X. This might hold you back from taking action. Instead of just saying, no, yes, I am. I'm the best. I'm the best. You can probably just admit the fact that, maybe they're correct. Maybe you could do with some more qualifications and you can just prove to them that, you can become more qualified with your actions. The same is true for your product, content, and business in general. Most of the time, everyone thinks their own stuff is great. A lot of times, if your stuff was that great, it'd probably be doing a bit better than what it is right now. I tell myself all the time, I need to get better. My content needs to get better. I need to make more useful stuff. I need to get a better product. I need to do whatever it may be. And that's a great source of motivation to just get better. And I think the reality is that it's most likely you're probably not even good enough to reach your goals yet. And that's fine. But that's where the motivation comes from, that there's a lot of work to be done. It's likely that you're just getting started and you have a lot of things that you need to do in your life and a lot of skills that you need to add. So that pretty much wraps it up. If you have any questions, DM me on Instagram. I'll leave the link in the description. Hopefully this video is good because I know it was long, but leave a comment, DM me on Instagram, subscribe for more stuff like this. I drop a ton of information on my channel about business, lead gen, paid ads, all this kind of stuff, especially with, mindset and what it takes to get to a certain level, and basically all the learnings that I've got from working with so many clients and doing so much stuff. Subscribe, DM me, comment. I'll see you very, very soon.